Welcome, Spartans, to Podcast Evolved, your favorite Halo podcast. I'm your host, Oren, this week, and with me we have a full crew. We have Aaron.
Hi, guys.
David.
Hello, everybody.
And KRYSTA.
Hi!
Congratulations, we're all here. We made it to the Super Bowl. Chiefs versus the 49ers. Who's going to win? David, who do you think?
I vote Chief because it's a Halo podcast.
There you go. Aaron?
Pokemon.
Pokemon?
Ooh.
Oh, does the dog with cancer count? Is that a thing?
There's no mascot in
Is there
American
not a TV
football
advert?
with a... there might be. I'm not sure. I haven't watched any Super Bowl ads just yet.
I read something about that.
I think it was, or was there's a PETA, there was like a rejected PETA, like, one as well.
The thing I read was some guy spent $6 million doing a thank you ad to the veterinary college that saved his dog as like an advertising thing for them for donations.
How much money?
$6 million.
Wow.
That's how much, like, a second costs.
Yeah, no, that's like I think a 30-second commercial is about $5 million.
Oh my god.
But yes, so we're recording this before the Super Bowl. We have the Master Chiefs going against some other team. So we're pulling for the Master Chiefs. And when this episode airs, I'm sure the Chiefs already won. So without any further ado, this is our first Lore Week episode in our new format that we alluded to on previous episodes. We're going to be talking about the Halo Array, kind of getting down to the basics as we launch this new series. Today we're gonna talk about kind of the creation and kind of the purpose that it served beyond of what you may kind of just know from playing the games, kind of dive a little deeper into their overall purpose, as well as where all the rings are currently, what their statuses are, and how the array may factor into Infinite, if what we think, because we're obviously playing on one of the installations in the game. KRYSTA will guide us through the conversation, so I will pitch it over to KRYSTA and take us away.
We're doing this magical lore thing where we're just kind of going over the basics of Halo again, kind of reintroducing some stuff, refamiliarizing ourselves with some stuff that maybe we forgot. Maybe it's just kind of, drifted to the back of our minds. We're trying to pull everything forward so we can kind of get a good overall look at what the Halo universe looks like today and how it got there. We're starting off this beautiful series with, of course, Halos, the Halo Array, not the games. The actual Halos, the big ring worlds, yeah?
I'm with you.
We're just gonna kind of just go over some of the basics, look to the future, look towards the past, and just go from there. So, first things first, what are Halos? Who wants to go over what the Halos are?
I do.
Okay, go over what the Halos are.
Oh, you actually want me to do something? Oh no, I'm not prepared, KRYSTA.
Okay, well, the Halos are giant rings.
Did you play the games or read the books, David?
They're kind of giant space stations, but
Yeah.
they are part weapon, part habitat, is the best way to describe them, because they are weapon of mass destruction and weirdly lifeboats for sentient creatures.
Yeah,
and
like a
flood.
wildlife preserve.
Yeah, they're also kind of like labs as well, because they have like flood samples on them and a few other things. But that's the basic gist of what they are, I think.
Yeah, they're literally just a ring, and the inside of the ring is a habitat or a world or just a place you can actually go to.
Like a biome.
Yeah, just a bunch of different biomes. Like it's constantly circling itself, so that's how it gets its gravity. It's a giant machine, but it's also a world. So it's an artificial world, does a lot of things. The Halos were originally pitched to us in Halo Combat Evolved as a religious icon for the Covenant. We didn't really know anything about them going into this game, but the first thing we kind of learn is that the Covenant don't want us on it because it's some sort of significance to their religion and to what they're doing. And this was fleshed out a little more later in the series of what exactly the Covenant think they are, but at first it was just like, there's a giant space alien ring in the sky, and these weird aliens really seem to like it even though they didn't build it.
And they really hate that we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really hate that we're here. And of course, throughout the game, we learn, of course, that it's not only a ring, it's a giant, massive weapon that kills everything.
What?
What?
And it also houses a dark evil secret.
A dark evil secret.
A squishy
343
secret.
guilty spark. Oh.
No, the flood. 343 isn't really a dark evil secret. He's more of a very bright, obviously sinister light bulb.
He's adorable and I love him.
I'm a fan.
Like we kind of talked about earlier, it was also a conservation and research facility for other things like the squishy secrets, and just humanity was a subject, you know, a bunch of different creatures and stuff like that. It's not very illustrated in the games yet, but it is almost like a giant space zoo in some regard.
They get into it more a little bit in 2 because you see the ruins on the Halo in 2 and you get a feeling like there were beings preserved here at some point, whereas in the first one, there's not really any wildlife. It's just flood and green spaces and trees. It's like someone built a really nice public park in the first Halo.
No one came and visited.
Yeah.
So the next is just why they were built. Does someone want to just go over the flood a little quick blurb about them?
Yeah, I'm ready this time, Krista. I'm ready.
Go over. Why were they created?
Originally, they were created as a means of combating the flood. They weren't 100% sure of what the flood was, so a lot of research was going into how the flood infected things, and they were studying this and they realized that the flood eats and consumes off sentient life form. So they designed a weapon that would kill sentient life form. And essentially how they would do this is that it actually destroys your nervous system. So I was reading about a little bit of that today to refresh my brain, but that's how they actually made sure it killed just that type, and that, let's say, most plants, fungi, mosses, all that kind of stuff was mostly left unattacked and unimpacted. And also obviously buildings and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. The arrays essentially send out this pulse, and there are multiples of them, so they're in different areas, and they overlap to kind of cover the whole galaxy. So that's kind of what their purpose was. And then they became more kind of refined in like the second generation. So yeah, I don't know if you want to go into that detail just yet, but like that's essentially what they...
Can I preempt the correction that's about to come in, because I can feel someone typing an email as we speak?
Oh boy.
Sure, go ahead.
The first Halo arrays that they made were less galactic, more solar. They were limited to the area of effect that they had.
Well, they could be tuned to like be a very smaller attack instead of just one large boom. They could be like, you're just gonna cleanse this planet or just do this little thing.
They were like a tactical weapon. That's why they had so many of them. You slip space them into a solar system, you wipe it out, you move on to the next one. Whereas when they shrank them down, they made them smaller and tuned them that the 7 of them would essentially create like overlapping fields and wipe out the entire galaxy, which I think was beyond the original larger rings. In their first iteration, they were bigger rings. They were big enough to go over planets, but they could like wipe out a solar system, but they couldn't like wipe out everything.
Yeah. The second array, called the Neoteric array, was the one that was just a reset everything button, while the original array, the senescent array, was more of just a let's just, do a little bit here, do a little bit there, not kind of a full shutdown. And that's back when they had hope that they was just a little bit of flood here and there that they could wipe it out instead of having to destroy everything.
But they had the one minor downside that the smaller rings don't have is when you slip space giant rings, you fuck everything up.
Yeah, the space-time continuum and all that stuff.
Reconciliation, I believe they call it, but it just screws up the slip space. And the bigger the thing you move in slip space, the more time slip space needs to recover. And when you fire these big giant rings around the galaxy, it causes a lot of problems.
Well, it means like other people can't be using slip space. Like it just kind of, you can only use so much slip space at one time, and like once you use that, it has to like, there's like a grace period before you can do another big object. It's very confusing, but it's explained really well in the Forerunner novels. So really quick, back to the Flood, just a little. The Flood are basically a alien parasite that consumes everything. Starts overrunning the galaxy, which is why In 98,445 BCE, the original 12 halos, the senescent array, were created.
Nice.
Nice.
All these dates really stop having any meaning after a while because the numbers are just so big.
It's a very specific date. I'm glad we were able to get that.
I pulled it off of one of our favorite sites, Halopedia. Very nice, thank you, boys. So just a couple cute little features of the rings. You know, they always have a core, they always have a control room, which we've seen in the newer array, and they always have an activation index to make sure that not every Joe Schmo can just go in there and press the button and kill everyone. It's really nice. Let's break it down to the senescent and the neoteric array real quick. So the senescent array was the original array. We haven't seen them in the games yet, which we probably never will because they got click-clacked.
Well, you could argue about Installation 7, but we can get to that.
We'll get to that.
But I get what you're saying.
So the senescent array originally had 12 rings. Like, that's a lot of rings.
And what's wild is that, like, you had 12 rings, they were larger.
3 times the size.
Yeah, they were 30,000 kilometers wide, but the rings that we know are only 10,000 kilometers wide.
So there are 3 times the size. There's 5 more than what we know in, I guess, modern Halo, but their blast radius was smaller. So
but that was back when they were more like all the Halos were part of the conservation project, but these ones were definitely part of it. Like this is when they were fighting humanity and
cataloging all the animals, and I guess they needed a lot of research space to see how the life that they were testing reacted to the flood, and they just had libraries upon libraries of DNA.
And this was also this was when the Forerunners were at their peak as well, so they had the time and resources to make these giant halos, while the next couple halos they make, the Neoteric array, they had to get out really quickly. Like, they were losing a war, they needed a solution, it needed to happen. So those were kind of the expedited halos, but ended up being much stronger.
Faber built them kind of like a backup plan. He had the bigger rings, but he also built the second.
He made them without anyone knowing, too. I think that was a big thing, and it was super secret.
You need an arc to build halos. We've seen the arc in Halo 3, but there was a greater arc. The arc we know is the lesser arc, but they had a much bigger, greater arc that built the bigger rings, and it was destroyed by the flood.
Completely. That was where all Forerunners were at the time, too, and it was just obliterated.
Yeah, they knew where it was, and it got wiped off the face of existence, but the smaller arc was hidden and secret, and it made these smaller rings, and it was all kind of like he was big into his backup plans. He was. Which was smart, but Faber's also kind of a dick, the master builder. He was kind of an asshole.
Yeah, not a nice guy.
Was the greater arc utilized for anything other than just the creation of the rings?
It was supposed to be a safe haven for Forerunners. Like, that was where they evacuated to.
It was packed full of Forerunners after Mithrilian fell.
And Mithrilian is their capital city, or capital planet?
Yeah, Medicant Bias just, like, beamed in a halo and just fucked them up. And then, like, left.
Well, I think the Star Roads tore it apart. They had a halo there. They used it to try and fight them. You get into all sorts of stuff like this that it's so hard to picture in the Forerunner books, but they talk about Star Roads, which I've never completely been able to figure out, but as far as I can picture in my head, they are artificial flood tentacles in space that were created by the precursors, but they basically tear the arc apart, and they have one of the last big halos there, and they try to use it to like fend off the Star Roads because conveniently Halos destroyed all of the precursor technology.
Yeah, now we're getting in real deep though.
I think that was the last. They got torn apart and shredded.
Yes. So that's about the senescent array. Do we have any more? I mean, anyone have anything else to say about this array?
Not really, other than the fact that, did their job, they got wrecked. The only one that really is of interest now really is Installation 7.
Well, I guess we should transition. So how were the senescent array destroyed to where we have the nesoteric array?
The neoteric array was 6 new rings, smaller, more refined. You know, they had the bigger weapon, which was kill all sentient life in a 3-dimensional radius of 25,000 light years with a cross-phased supermassive neutrons, which were tuned to destroy, you know, just sentient life. It was very well tuned because dumb bugs and stuff didn't die.
Yeah, like David mentioned.
If you notice, only 6 were made. So one of the senescent arrays was saved. It was Installation 07, one we call Zeta Halo. It ended up being downsized, like literally, like chunks of it got so damaged that they just kind of ejected it into space. So it kind of downsized into the 10,000 kilometers, and then it was refitted with the better weapon, and just became part of the neoteric array.
When we get to the naming scheme, it'll make more sense why that one was 7, just because the original 6 were already there, and since this one of the 12 was salvageable, it just became number 7.
Yeah. Of course, now we kind of get to the end of the Forerunners, where they ended up not having a choice. Everything else of theirs was destroyed by the Flood. They were losing, and the Flood didn't know about these arrays until it was pretty much too late. They pressed the button at the Lesser Arc about 10,000 years ago. All 7 rings were fired, and then boom. Hard reset on the galaxy, and that's kind of when the Librarian's conservation method system kind of came in. That reseeded the galaxy with life, which was what the halos were for. It was kind of taking lesser beings like humans and other aliens and stuff like that, and just reseeding them around the galaxy. And then, you know, that was it. One thing to note, rings can be fired individually from the actual ring, which we've kind of seen in Halo 4 and Halo 2. Or, like in Halo 3, they can be fired all together from the Arc.
If you fire one ring individually, the others all go into automatic standby, just in case it's required.
Yeah, and that's kind of how Halo 2 sort of went, because they were about to activate it, and everyone went into standby, and then when it was canceled, they're still in standby, and that's where we're like, we need to go to the Arc.
Yeah, and then you go to the Arc and see the cool, funky hologram control room.
So cool. It's so cool, though. That's a really cool scene. So I'm just going to quickly go over, you know, what Halos are around today, since we're in present day, what Halos are around and what their status is. So, of course, we know Installation 00, or the Arc, which was heavily damaged and is currently being repaired, as we saw in Halo Wars 2.
And the Banished still have a large
hold on it, yeah.
Yeah, and even the Spirit of Fire is still over there, correct?
Yes, the Spirit of Fire hasn't left yet, that we know of.
Okay.
There's still some UNSC presence and there's still some Banished presence, but it's still very... It's not... Its status is unknown at this point.
Yeah. Do we think that it's damaged to the point where it can't produce more Halos if another Halo gets destroyed?
No, that's kind of was explained in Halo Wars 2, because it made another Halo.
It sure did.
And it made that in the time between Halo 3 and Halo Wars 2 when it was damaged, ironically, by a Halo.
Yeah, so I mean, the Forerunner constructs that live on the Arc are just made to make sure the Arc's okay, repair the Arc, and make sure it's ready to create Halos when it needs to be creating Halos. So, I mean, they just start mining other planets like Earth. Earth was mined.
As they said in Halo Wars 2, it by default, it builds most of a Halo and just leaves it sitting. The Halo from Halo 3 had probably been there just waiting to be finished since the original Halos were built and fired.
Yeah, and then it just gets retrofitted with all the weapons and mechanisms and then is sent out to where it needs to go. Because the Arc is also a huge slipspace portal that kind of sends the Halos where they need to go.
But it's a pretty good turnaround time on making a Halo, because between Halo 3 and Halo Wars 2 isn't that long, and they managed to churn out another Halo.
A fully functioning one, too. We're going to go over naming conventions real quick, because, you know, Installation 1 is also called Beta Halo, so the installations are numbered 1 through 9 currently. That just denotes, you know, how they were made, in the order they were made, basically. So 1 was created first, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th are new additions, but they're still called 8 and 9, even though they're replacements. And then we have the Greek names, Beta, Gamma, Alpha, all that stuff, and that is in the order they are fired. So when they were fired, that's the Greek name. Just kind of a little background there. So our first installation is Installation 1, or Beta Halo, which is unknown. We have not found that one yet. We also haven't found Installation 2, Epsilon, so that one's unknown.
Is we being the UNSC and the player as we go through the Halo games?
Yeah, it's basically the UNSC. Like, it's basically when you look it up on Halopedia, there's no information about it, is basically what I'm basing it off.
Yeah, I'm just kind of clarifying.
Like, as of now, in the Halo universe, we don't know anything about these Halos. So we do know Installation 03 Gamma, which was one of the ones we saw in Halo 4. Just kind of briefly, we saw it in Halo 4, and then in Escalation, Master Chief gets to fight the Didact a second time on Installation 03 and literally ejects the control room with the Didact on it into space. Gamma is currently damaged because it has no control room. Gamma's not in perfect condition at the moment, but it is faring better than Installation 04 Alpha Halo, which was completely destroyed in Halo CE. We blew that up.
I regret nothing.
I regret nothing either. Delta Halo, Installation 05, is the one we saw in Halo 2 that almost got activated and is currently under joint control of the UNSC and the Swords of Sanghelios. They're sharing the space right now. Of course, there's research and stuff there. Installation 06, or Kappa Halo, we don't know yet. We're not sure about that one. It'll definitely be the cutest Halo because it's Kappa.
All the cute aliens live there.
Yeah, they're like, whoa.
No ugly aliens allowed.
Installation 07, or Zeta Halo, is our special Halo that used to be part of the original array, so it is obviously the most mysterious, has the most history, has a lot of interesting things going around. It is currently under UNSC control, and it's been confirmed that is the Halo ring we're going to be kind of hanging out on in Halo Infinite. And we'll talk more about that in a second. I have 2 more installations to go over. Installation 08, which was a replacement for 04, which we blew up, and we also blew up this one in Halo 3. It was the one that we fired to eradicate the last, quote-unquote, last of the Flood on the Ark, and totally fucked up the Ark. And finally, we come to Installation 09, another replacement for Alpha Halo. These guys are just like, please stop killing Installation 4, we're just trying to fix it.
But we're really good at it.
And this Halo is lovingly called Anders Halo because of the events of Halo Wars. It is currently controlled by the Created, which is terrifying. If you've seen the legendary ending of Halo 5, you hear a humming, Cortana humming, and then a Halo comes online. That is Installation 09 getting ready to do something.
Is that confirmed that that's Anders Halo?
Yeah, it was on Halopedia.
Interesting. I'll have to look that up again. All right, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, it is Anders Halo. I took all this off the internet, guys. Of course, it's correct.
Then that is the perfect way to kind of blend those two together, Halo Wars 2 and Infinite.
That's the impression that I got when I was.
I'm very excited about that.
When you pair those, when you kind of put those two together, they complement each other very nicely.
So that's the current status of Halos right now. So if we want to go into, our beautiful Installation 7 Zeta Halo predictions, if Oren, you want to start?
Well, I think, the kind of the 2 questions that I was thinking about, or the obvious question, we'll start there, is like, do we think that the Halo array is at risk of being fired again? In order to fire them all, like we said, we have to go to the Ark, and the Ark's heavily damaged.
It's also hard to get to. The Ark is literally outside of our galaxy, and the only portal we know of is on Earth, and is heavily guarded at the moment.
You can fly there the old-fashioned way. It just takes a while.
Just take a little while, yeah.
It takes about 2 weeks, I think, isn't it?
No, I think to go the old-fashioned way, it takes about 4 months in slip space, because I think that's what the Rubicon...
That's right.
In one of the Forerunner books, there's a ship called the Rubicon, which was fitted with a Forerunner drive. It's a UNSC ship, and it flew to the Ark out of the galaxy, and I think it took about 4 months, maybe 6.
Okay.
You can get there, although I don't think on regular human slip space drives, it's not really feasible.
Yeah.
But you can go the old-fashioned way, which will be interesting to see if certain created Guardians fly there?
The Guardians would be able to get there very fast, though, because they're using Forerunner slipspace portals.
Also, remember, as far as we know, Cortana controls Earth right now.
Yeah, so she might just activate, because the portal on Earth is basically the super fast portal that gets you there in like 2 weeks.
I kind of assume, though, the Ark has, like, call blocker.
No, definitely. I think that was the thing that Atriox did, didn't he? He disabled that.
I don't know if Atriox disabled it because we never did get an answer about who took the Spirit of Fire there. I know the portal shut down after they arrived, but something took the Spirit of Fire there, because if you remember in Halo Wars 2, they ain't got a slipspace drive. So someone opened a portal for them.
They didn't just float all the way over there over the course of 30 years?
Conveniently, all of that information gets laid down beforehand in Hunters in the Dark, which starts off on Zeta Halo.
Which has a really good concept, but doesn't really, like, kind of trips all over itself because of all the crazy stuff it's talking about.
They do drop some interesting facts, though, about Zeta, because they talk about how it doesn't have an obvious control room. They can't find it because it's not built like any other Halo, because it's one of the originals that has been repurposed. At the time Hunters in the Dark takes place, I don't even think they know where the cartographer is, or if there is a cartographer. And they still can't find the control room. So things like that could be good Halo Infinite missions.
Yeah, and kind of mixes up how we previously have known Halo and how we explore them and what we're looking for, since this is a retrofitted from the old array. It kind of leaves us to kind of rediscover what we know and reapply it. I do want to clarify real quick, the ending of Halo Wars 2. So yeah, after Anders goes through the portal and Installation 9 is put to where I guess Installation 4 used to be, a Guardian's just waiting for her already there.
Oh, I don't remember that at all.
So yeah, I guess we're going off of what we know from the interwebs, that the Halo at the end of Halo 5 is the same that Anders has, but that's kind of where that connection and that illusion is based upon. So, but we also know from our conversation earlier that you don't need the Ark to activate just the single Halo. We activated Halo 4 or Installation 4 and Halo 1, and so that, assuming there is a control room or a control room replacement, or could Installation 7 be at risk at being fired, or will Cortana kind of just keep the Guardians as the primary means of a threat to control the galaxy?
Well, a couple things to really note here real quick is that at the end of Halo Wars 2 and Halo 5, which seem to be around the same period of time, the Created are threatening with Halos because they have at least one we know of, but also Halo Infinite's going to take place a couple years in the future.
That's true.
It's hard to kind of exactly know what's going to happen between that time, but we know two things. We know a chunk of time is going to pass between 5 and Infinite. We also know from the Brohammer trailer is that we lost some kind of battle at Installation 07. Because he says, we lost to Master Chief. So there's going to be a battle at Installation 07 over something.
I'm wondering if Cortana doesn't know where the Halos are, because that information would be either on the Ark that she doesn't in theory yet have access to, or it's on the Absolute Record, which in theory we don't have access to again because we don't have a key, going back to last week's book club. So I'm wondering if she's having to do what the humans are doing and track down the Halos one at a time. She might not know. All of the Oni AIs stayed in their briefcase. They all left with Osman, so none of them defected. So she might not have that information as to where they are.
But she would know where Installation 4 is. But she has access to the domain.
The domain wasn't accessible when the Halos were being deployed. Don't forget, the domain didn't come back online till later.
So would that information just... I guess it just depends how the domain works. If the domain updates with, recent Forerunner information like Halo locations, or if the domain is kind of stuck with the old information and isn't updating itself. I think the domain
was blocked because the weird thing is, the domain was unreachable before the Halos fired because of the effect of the Halos firing in the future. The Halos were so powerful they disrupted the domain back through time, and that's why the Forerunners weren't able to access the domain in the run-up to the end of their civilization. They lost access because it was all disrupted. So in theory, it didn't upload until the domain was accessible again, because in Halo 4, all those terminals on Requiem keep telling you that they're trying to access the domain, and nothing was able to do it until apparently Cortana got access to it, which makes me think if that information didn't update and the Ark is still offline or in like airplane mode, then she might not know where they are, which could be the whole she eventually tracked down Zeta Halo and conquered it.
So this might actually just, because the UNSC knew where the Zeta Halo is, so maybe she found out somehow through the UNSC, but do we think this is almost going to be an arms race to control all the Halos?
Yeah.
I could see it.
Otherwise, I mean, the Halos are in it and they need to be kept relevant, so I guess it has to be some kind of scramble for resources. I mean, it's kind of hard to judge this early out. Halo has to be important. We've seen there's at least 2 Halos in it. The Created have a Halo, UNSC have Halos. They have to do something with them, right?
Yeah, even Cortana knows the Flood aren't gone. Like, she's not stupid. If she's holding the mantle and she wants to control the mantle, then she needs to be able to protect the galaxy if the Flood reappear. So she probably wants control of the Halos to, like, ensure that.
Could it also just be some of the research that might be housed on the Halos as well?
True.
Because every Halo has a bunch of Flood research facilities on them, and they were all like, that's what the part of the monitors were tasked with. We're trying to, after the firing of the Halos, to continue to look for cures for the Flood.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it might just be looking for that, or it just might be that the Created want to control all Forerunner artifacts, and some of the biggest ones are the Halos, and of course the monitors that go with them.
The other thing I'm thinking is Infinity's mission, I think they say it in Halo 4, is to locate and disable all of the Halos. Like, that is their goal, is to go find them all and make sure that they can't be fired. So she might just be trying to stop the UNSC from vandalizing them. The Halos are worthless if they can't fire.
Yeah.
They're just glorified space stations then. They don't really serve another purpose. So it could just be that.
And I mean, could we eventually see the Halos become refined to the point where they can fire like the original array, where they become a little more easily used?
I think they can be fine-tuned to like even certain species. Like I think you can edit it that way. I was reading up on it earlier. I think you can tune them to, like, let's say, for lack of a better terminology, a certain wavelength and target a specific species. Do you know what I mean? Maybe that's how they're doing it. And
or it's more of like it's like a certain like intelligence level, I think, is what it kind of does.
Because you can do a low power as well, because that's what Guilty Spark was going to do in Halo 3. He talked about using the ring to do a tactical pulse on the nuke, or on the Ark, which sounded more like, we're just going to pulse the Ark and not much else.
Yeah.
So I assume you can fire it on low power mode or high power.
So it just doesn't have as strong of an area of effect.
Yeah, I assume the old rings just weren't capable of it. I think there's something, now don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that the rings need to fire in sequence to play off each other, and that's how they cover the galaxy.
yeah, they do. The original array, or sorry, the Neoteric array works like that.
I think at one point someone mentions that they only needed 6. The 7th one just gave them extra coverage for security, but they only needed, I think that's why they only had 6 rings originally, but of course, Bungie and everything else, 7's a very important number.
Well, that's why, like, 6 is Kappa, but Installation 7's Zeta. So, I mean, it kind of skips a couple letters there.
I think it can fire with 6 and wipe the galaxy, but 7 just happened to be a bonus. We had a spur one.
Yeah. So I mean, like, it could actually be just a big Halo arms race, because, I mean, since these Halos are a lot smaller, they can literally just be slip-spaced in and out, like slip-space to a planet, destroy the planet, like, kind of like just a huge, just Death Star, basically.
Yeah, they kind of are, and I still think we'll get Flood back in this game because they have to reappear at some point, and I'm sure the Created know that while they're not directly in danger. The other thing is, I wonder, does Cortana fear the Flood because she's experienced the Gravemind firsthand?
Oh, 100%.
Shit's gotta leave you, like, nervous all the time, because no one else has the experience that she had, like, John was attacked by a flood and almost turned, but Cortana's had the full brunt of it, so I'd imagine the second they appear, she's going to be like, fire the halos.
Also, she is technically supposed to be, the whole point of their created taking on the mantle is that they have certain responsibilities, like protecting people from the flood. So I imagine she's going to be in direct, or I suppose in conflict with them pretty much straight away.
Or maybe she'll join them. Well, we'll talk about the flood when we get in the next lore episode, but there's some interesting kind of theories to kind of what the flood are doing and what the flood are, and, you know, the end goal for the flood, which can be almost manipulated to seem like a good goal in a way. But we'll get into that later. What else we got, guys? Do we have anything else?
I mean, the only other thing I can really think of is, I do like the speculation of essentially an arms race, as they are the galactic super weapon of the galaxy. What is also interesting is the whole conservation measure that the librarian put forth, and what we've already seen in some of the trailers that's come out for Infinite is a focus on wildlife, and we've kind of seen a little bit of that with like Halo Reach and some other games where you get a little glimpse of wildlife. And so I think maybe the conservation measure in the library of just the source of all the galaxy species could maybe play into something, or there could be some more exploration in that sort of section of the ring. And maybe like in Halo 1 where the flood were kind of just discovered through the playing, maybe we get a new type of faction or a new type of enemy, whether it's, you know, a large or a small enemy, but kind of comes out of that through the UNFC's sort of scramble to kind of find whatever resources that the Zeta Halo can kind of offer. So that's kind of something I always think about.
Or maybe Cortana starts resurrecting species that didn't get reseeded, because there was a bunch that didn't make it.
I don't know. The only other thing of use on the Halos, although we don't know if it's still there or not, is Gamma Halo had the Composer's Forge, but when they took out the Didact, they also, in theory, destroyed the Forge because they ejected the control room into it.
Yeah, I kind of got the sense that the Forge was destroyed, as well as the other, like, 4 composers that were there.
So it's a technology that, I don't know, in theory could be gone, or the ring itself could rebuild the Forge. It could be something, because I'd imagine the Composer would be very useful to an AI that would want to control organic creatures and could convert some of them into data and absorb them. That becomes like a proper weapon for the created.
Created making more created. I kind of like that. That's interesting.
And that would also give the Didact a way to come back too, if that's something we also want to see.
Yeah, I'd say if we ever see the Didact again, he kind of becomes like the ghost in the machine, basically. I could see Gamma Halo just being Didact Halo.
That would be cool. I mean, maybe he becomes part of the arms race as well, though. You never know.
He could just become part of the created. It's weird. He has like the potential to do that.
Isn't he immune from the Composer's effects?
He was immune, but the end of that comic book definitely shows him. I originally thought it was him being blown up, but once someone said it looks like him being composed, I wonder, did the Didact have the ability to control that? His immunity could be something he could like switch off if he needed to, because if the choice was between going splat or being composed,
I don't know.
The Didact seems like the sort of guy that would take his chances as a Promethean.
Oh, I don't know.
It'd be a lot of explaining.
That's a lot of explaining.
To be fair, they didn't really explain it, though. They just had one panel that can be left to the imagination, and that seems about right.
Right, to get us from that panel to Infinite is what I was kind of saying. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, but I think to kind of get towards the wrapping up point, I feel like in order to avoid an overly complicated and slightly rehashed to what we're used to, I feel like Infinite can't rely too heavily on the array and just the overall impact on the whole, on all the rings, but kind of having that threat and having that sort of tug of war over the Zeta Halo or Installation 09 can be kind of influenced and fought about. So that's kind of where I am personally thinking that we might get some conflict in sort of that realm from what we've all been discussing.
I mean, the main players in Halo right now, none of them want to activate all the Halos and kill all life. Because, like, it doesn't make sense for the created because Cortana wants to take the mantle and help normal, non-created creatures. So, I mean, and of course, the humanity and the Swords of Sang Helios and stuff like that also don't want to set off the Halos because they'll die too.
So they have to think of a new use of the Halos, because it's got to be more than just we have it so you don't kind of thing.
The only person that seemed to make weird moves is Atriox, because he went straight to the source, which makes me wonder why he went there. I'd always thought maybe he was working with the created, but it's hard to tell.
I think Atriox is being built up to be the new, like, Covenant, which I think will be the third faction. In Halo 5, we saw the Covenant completely fall. That was one of the, like, the Battle of Sunayon. That was the entire point, was killing off the rest of the Covenant.
I think they definitely will be like that Covenant replacement faction, but I don't know what his motivations are yet, which has me intrigued as to who is he there for.
I want him to be there for himself.
Just like an agent of chaos, kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I want him to be there to dig up Mending and fucking Bias.
Yes, please.
Not to get back to this, because I harp on this every now and again, but someone needs to dig that fucker out of the desert.
I like him. He's amazing. We know he's around. We saw him in Halo 3.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just curious why he went to the Ark and what his goal was when he went there. He's the only one that did what I thought Cortana would do straight away, which is send a Guardian straight to the Ark and take control of it.
Who knows? He's a weird guy.
I think we're about there. Any other final thoughts? Or do you think we have a good foundation on what this video game franchise is based upon?
I think we're good. I think we know a little bit more about Halos now, huh?
I would say so. Well, like KRYSTA said before, and we've been talking about it throughout the episode, the Flood is quite an interesting faction in the Halo universe. They are present in most of the games and have quite an impact in some of the novels as well. So we will be diving into them next lore week. We're going to talk about the origins of them and kind of what their beliefs are and how they've kind of maneuvered through space and time. And then the big question at the end of it all is, how can the Flood come back into the fold? They can play a role in Halo Infinite, so more on that later in the coming weeks. I promised the patrons of our Patreon that I would read their names, so I'll give them a read real quick before we do a full sign-off. I wanted to thank Alex, DeSudo, Duststorm, Edgar, Evan, Gonk, HW, Jim, John, and John Bob, Connor, Lucas, Matt, Matthew B, Matthew S, Mohammed, Morton, Nick, Orion, Philip, Raul, Ryan, Rye, Sabrina, Spencer, and Zach. Thank you all for your continued support. I've been your host, Oren, and thank you for joining me this week, and we'll look forward to Halo Infinite and beyond. Evolved!
Evolved!